The Nightingale, despite its damage, led the charge. Sarah had positioned her ship perfectly, using its compromised systems as bait to draw the Kraxans into the killing zone. When the plasma lance finally came back online, its beam cut through the nebula gases like a divine blade, splitting a Kraxan cruiser in two. Multiple enemy ships disabled, Walsh reported, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. Their formation is breaking up. They're trying to retreat, Morris added, but the nebula's interfering with their quantum drive calculations. Sarah nodded. As planned. Signal all ships. Close the net. The hidden human fleet moved in perfect coordination, herding the panicked Kraxan vessels deeper into the nebula. Each attempt to escape was met with precise weapons fire, not to destroy but to disable. Sarah wanted prisoners, not martyrs. Ambassador Kextall watched in rigid silence as his species' military superiority was systematically dismantled. "This," he finally said, "this is impossible. You were defeated. Broken." "No," Sarah corrected him. "We were reborn. Everything you did to us, every attack, every atrocity, it forced us to change, to adapt, to become something new." She gestured to the tactical display showing the battle. "This isn't just a victory, Ambassador. This is evolution." The last Kraxan ship surrendered as the nebula began to clear, pushed aside by the energy expended in the battle. The Phoenix Squadron emerged from the stellar clouds, their true forms finally revealed to their longtime oppressors. Each vessel bore the scars of combat, but they had achieved something unprecedented. A decisive victory against the supposedly invincible Kraxan Empire. "Send word to Earth Command," Sarah ordered. "Operation Phoenix is complete. The revolution begins now." She turned to Kextall one final time. "You're going to help us send a message to your leaders. Humanity isn't just fighting back. We've surpassed you. And we're coming for everything you took from us." The Nightingale led the fleet out of the nebula. Its mission accomplished. Behind them, they left more than disabled Kraxan ships. They left the shattered myth of Kraxan invincibility. Humanity had done more than survive. They had evolved into something new, something that would reshape the galaxy. The war wasn't over, but everything had changed. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity was rising from the ashes of its defeat, stronger and more formidable than ever before. The docking clamps engaged with a soft thud. "Ambassador," Sarah said, "welcome aboard the Nightingale." The Kraxan delegation moved through the Nightingale's corridors with measured steps, their scaled forms towering over their human hosts. Ambassador Kextall led the group, four eyes constantly scanning, taking in every detail of the supposedly simple research vessel. Behind him, four other Kraxans followed, scientists according to their credentials, though Sarah noted the way they carried themselves. Military training was hard to hide, regardless of species. "Your ship's design is interesting," Kextall commented, mandibles clicking softly as the translator conveyed his words. "Rather basic for a research vessel." Sarah smiled, playing her role perfectly. "We make do with what we have, Ambassador." After the war, resources became scarce. Most of our advanced research vessels were destroyed. A flash of satisfaction crossed the ambassador's alien features, exactly the reaction Sarah had expected. The Kraxans loved reminders of their victory, of humanity's supposed weakness. It made them careless. Lieutenant Morris led them into the main research lab, a space carefully prepared for this moment. Genuine mineral samples from the asteroid field filled the displays, along with real data about their composition. The best deceptions, Sarah had learned, were built on foundations of truth. "These mineral formations are quite unique," Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their actual geologist, explained. She pointed to a particularly complex crystal structure. "We've never seen anything quite like them in human space." One of the Kraxan scientists moved closer to the display, compound eyes narrowing. "The crystalline matrix appears similar to those used in our shield generators." "Does it?" Sarah asked innocently. How fascinating. Perhaps that explains the unusual energy readings we've detected. The conversation continued, a delicate dance of half-truths and careful observations. Sarah watched as the Kraxans became increasingly engaged in the scientific discussion, their military bearings slowly relaxing. They were falling for it, believing they were dealing with simple, defeated humans desperate to share their minor discoveries. But beneath the peaceful exchange, the Nightingale was changing. Microscopic nanobots, hidden in the ship's walls, were slowly repositioning critical systems. Weapons aligned behind innocent-looking panels. Shield generators charged under the guise of routine power fluctuations. Every step the Kraxans took deeper into the ship brought them closer to the trap. "We would be very interested in conducting joint research here," Kextel said finally. "These minerals could have significant applications." "We would welcome the collaboration," Sarah replied. "Though we'll need approval from your military command, I assume, given the strategic location of the asteroid field." The ambassador's mandibles clicked again, a sign of amusement. "A formality only. Your ship hardly poses a threat to Kraxan security." A subtle vibration ran through the deck plates, unnoticeable to anyone who wasn't expecting it. Lieutenant Walsh's signal. Long-range sensors had detected the approaching Kraxan battle fleet, right on schedule. They had taken the bait. "Perhaps we should discuss this over a meal," Sarah suggested. "We've prepared something special in your honor." As they led the delegation toward the ship's dining area, Sarah caught Morris's eye. He gave an imperceptible nod. All weapon systems were ready. Years of preparation were about to pay off. The Kraxans had never understood humanity. Not really. They saw humans as primitive, predictable, broken. They hadn't realized that every defeat had taught humanity lessons, that every loss had forced them to evolve. The Nightingale wasn't just a ship. It was the product of 15 years of adaptation, of learning to turn weakness into strength. Sarah felt the weight of the small transmitter in her pocket, the device that would trigger the Nightingale's transformation. Soon, the Kraxans would learn that they hadn't broken humanity. They had forced it to become something new, something far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The dining room doors opened, revealing a carefully prepared setting. "Please," Sarah gestured to the seats, "make yourselves comfortable. We have much to discuss about our future collaboration." As the Kraxans took their places, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. They had no idea that this simple research vessel, this seemingly harmless crew of scientists, was about to change the course of the war. The perfect deception was nearly complete. The first explosion rocked the Nightingale just as Ambassador Kextel raised his drinking vessel to his mandibles. The liquid splashed across the table as the ship shuddered, alarms blaring through the previously peaceful dining room. "What's happening?" the ambassador demanded, all four eyes narrowing with sudden suspicion. Sarah Chen stood slowly, dropping the friendly researcher persona like a worn-out coat. "Right on schedule," she said, her voice carrying the steel edge of command. "Your attack fleet just destroyed our sensor buoys in the outer asteroid field." Kextel's scales darkened, a sign of rage in his species. "You knew they were coming." "We counted on it," Sarah replied, pressing the transmitter in her pocket. Throughout the ship, hidden panels began to slide away, revealing weapon stations. The dining room's elegant walls retracted, exposing armored bulkheads and gun ports. "We needed your fleet here to witness what happens next." The Kraxan delegation reached for weapons that weren't there. They'd been quietly neutralized during their security screening. Lieutenant Morris and his security team emerged from hidden compartments, weapons trained on the aliens. "Bridge," Sarah commanded into her now active military comm. "Execute Protocol Phoenix." The Nightingale's transformation began in earnest. The ship's outer hull, seemingly weathered and patched, shed its disguise. Layers of advanced armor unfolded like blooming metal flowers. Weapon arrays emerged from hidden recesses, their barrels glowing with charged energy. The reactor, previously running at minimal power, roared to full capacity. "Impossible," one of the Kraxan scientists whispered, watching the transformation on the room's tactical displays. "Your technology. You couldn't have. You taught us well." Sarah cut him off. "Every ship you destroyed, every colony you bombarded. We learned. We adapted. We evolved." The tactical display showed the approaching Kraxan fleet, 15 warships, led by a dreadnought. They had come expecting to find a helpless research vessel to escort back to their territory. Instead, they were about to face humanity's deadliest creation. "Lieutenant Walsh, status of our weapons." "All systems online, Commander." Walsh's voice came through crisp and clear. "Shield generators at maximum. Quantum torpedoes armed. Plasma lance charged." Sarah turned to Kextel, who stood rigid with fury and disbelief. "You should watch this, Ambassador. Your people need to understand what you've created." The Nightingale's engines, previously dampened to appear weak, burst to full power. The ship accelerated with impossible speed, its advanced inertial dampeners allowing maneuvers that should have torn a normal vessel apart. "Enemy fleet in range," Walsh reported. "They're charging weapons. Show them who we really are," Sarah ordered. The Nightingale's first shot came from its spinal plasma lance, a weapon reverse-engineered from studying destroyed Kraxan ships. The beam of superheated matter cut through the lead warship's shields like they weren't there, splitting the vessel in half. Chaos erupted as the Kraxan fleet realized they weren't hunting prey but had instead walked into a predator's lair. Their formation broke apart as the Nightingale danced between them, its advanced maneuverability making it seem like a ghost. Quantum torpedoes, humanity's own innovation, phased through enemy shields before detonating inside hull compartments. Plasma beams lashed out with surgical precision, targeting engines and weapon systems. The Nightingale wasn't just fighting, it was demonstrating the full extent of humanity's advancement. "Your ships are impressive," Sarah told the watching ambassador as another Kraxan vessel erupted in flames. "But you made a crucial mistake. You thought defeating us would make us submit. Instead, it forced us to surpass you." The dreadnought finally managed to land a hit, its energy beams splashing against the Nightingale's shields. The ship shuddered, but the advanced barrier held. Another gift of humanity's desperate innovation. "Multiple enemy ships disabled," Walsh reported. "Dreadnought is attempting to coordinate a retreat." "Not yet," Sarah commanded. "Disable their engines. I want them to stay and witness this." The Nightingale spun on its axis, bringing all its weapon arrays to bear on the massive dreadnought. Energy beams, torpedoes, and plasma bolts converged on the Kraxan flagship's engines, methodically destroying its ability to flee. In less than 20 minutes, the pride of the Kraxan fleet had been reduced to floating wreckage or disabled hulks. The Nightingale hovered among them, its true form finally revealed. A warship unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Sarah turned to the stunned Kraxan delegation. "Now, Ambassador, we're going to have a very different kind of discussion about the future of human-Kraxan relations. And this time, we'll be negotiating from a position of strength." The Nightingale limped through the debris field of its first major battle, its once pristine transformed hull now bearing the scars of combat. In the makeshift brig, formerly the ship's secondary storage bay, Ambassador Kextel and his delegation sat in silent fury, watched over by armed guards. The rest of the ship buzzed with controlled chaos as the crew raced to repair critical systems. "Damage report," Sarah commanded, standing in the now militarized bridge. The elegant research consoles had given way to tactical displays, showing their position deep in Kraxan space. Lieutenant Morris wiped grease from his hands as he delivered the news. "Port shield generator is running at 40%. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5, contained but not pretty. Main reactors stable, but we're burning more coolant than I'd like." "The weapons?" Sarah asked, knowing their survival might depend on them. "Plasma lance needs 6 hours to recharge after that last barrage. Other systems are operational, but our ammunition stores..." He trailed off, shaking his head. Dr. Tanaka spoke up from her station, now doubling as damage control. We can't take another hit like that last one from the dreadnought. The experimental armor plating held, but the molecular bonds are stressed. One more direct hit could shatter it. Sarah absorbed the information, her mind racing through scenarios. They had achieved their primary objective, demonstrating humanity's new capabilities to the Kraxan leadership. But now came the harder part, getting back to human space with their prisoners and data intact. "Commander," Walsh called out, her voice tense. Long-range sensors detecting multiple signatures. The Kraxans are mobilizing everything they've got in this sector. "Expected," Sarah replied. "They can't afford to let us escape. Not with what we've shown them. Not with who we're carrying." She turned to the tactical display, studying the approaching enemy signatures. How long until they can intercept? At their current speed, 4 hours, but they're pushing their engines hard. Could be sooner. Sarah felt the weight of command settle more heavily on her shoulders. They had planned for this, but plans rarely survived contact with reality. The Nightingale was damaged, their prisoners were dangerous, and they were surrounded by enemy territory. "Status of the quantum drive?" she asked. Morris grimaced. "It'll work, but we can't maintain it for long. The power requirements with our damaged reactor would tear us apart." Sarah finished. "How many jumps can we manage?" 3, maybe 4 short ones. After that, we're running on conventional drives only." Sarah nodded, her mind already formulating a strategy. Plot a course through the Severan Nebula. Multiple short jumps, random vectors. Make them work to track us. "The nebula?" Walsh questioned. "The radiation will play hell with our sensors, and our shields are already compromised." "It'll affect them too," Sarah countered. "And I'd rather fight blind than face their entire fleet in open space." As the crew moved to execute her orders, Sarah made her way to the makeshift break. She found Ambassador Kextall exactly where she'd left him, his posture rigid with dignity even in captivity. "Your ship is damaged," he stated as she approached. "You'll never escape our territory." Sarah smiled slightly. "You still don't understand what we are, do you? Your people forced us to become something new, something that doesn't break under pressure, something that gets stronger." "You were a primitive species," Kextall hissed. "We offered you advancement under our guidance." "No," Sarah corrected. "You offered us submission or death. So we chose a third option. We evolved. Every ship you destroyed taught us about your weapons. Every colony you bombarded showed us how to make better shields. You gave us no choice but to surpass you." The ship shuddered as the quantum drive engaged for their first jump. The stars outside shifted, space itself bending around them as they leaped through the void. Warning alarms blared as the damaged systems strained under the pressure. "Even if you escape," Kextall said, "you've started a war you cannot win." Sarah's expression hardened. "That's where you're wrong, Ambassador. We're not starting a war. We're finishing the one you began 15 years ago. And this time, we're fighting it our way." The Nightingale emerged from its quantum jump, its hull groaning from the stress. Ahead lay the roiling clouds of the Severan Nebula, their best chance at survival, and the next phase of humanity's fight back against their would-be conquerors. "Battle stations," Sarah commanded as she returned to the bridge. "Prepare for nebula insertion, and get ready for company. I don't intend to make this easy for them." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, their earlier personas as researchers completely forgotten. They had trained for this, prepared for this moment. They were no longer pretending to be something they weren't. They were showing the galaxy exactly what humanity had become. The Severan Nebula wrapped around the Nightingale like a living shroud, its swirling purple-green gases reducing visibility to nearly nothing. Energy discharges crackled against the ship's weakened shields as radiation from the stellar phenomenon battered its hull. On the bridge, the crew worked in tense silence, every sensor reading potentially meaning the difference between survival and destruction. "Contact," Walsh's voice cut through the quiet. 3 signatures, bearing 27 Mark IV. Classification, Sarah demanded, her hands gripping the command chair. Kraxan destroyers. They're running active sensors, trying to burn through the nebula. Sarah allowed herself a grim smile. The Kraxans were desperate, using brute force methods to find them. But in doing so, they were making themselves easy targets. Weapons status. Plasma lance still charging, Morris reported. All other systems operational, but this nebula's playing hell with targeting. We don't need perfect targeting, Sarah said. Just good enough. Signal the Lazarus Protocol to all ships in range. Ambassador Kextal, who had been brought to the bridge under heavy guard to witness what was coming, clicked his mandibles in confusion. All ships, you are alone here, human. Sarah turned to him, her eyes glinting with satisfaction. Are we? Throughout the nebula, silent shapes began to move. Ships that had been hiding for months, appearing to be nothing more than derelict hulks or merchant vessels, suddenly came alive. Like the Nightingale, they shed their disguises, revealing weapons and technology that should have been beyond humanity's reach. By the first nest, one of the Kraxan scientists whispered, watching the tactical display. How many? 15 ships, Sarah answered, all like the Nightingale, all waiting for this moment. You didn't just drive us to evolve, Ambassador. You taught us patience. The nebula itself seemed to come alive as hidden human vessels activated their systems. Each one had been positioned months or even years ago, waiting for the Nightingale to spring the trap and draw in the Kraxan response fleet. Commander, Walsh called out, receiving ready signals from all vessels. Phoenix Squadron is online. Sarah stood, facing the stunned Kraxan delegation. You thought you had broken humanity, forced us into hiding. The truth is, we've been hunting you. Every civilian ship you've ignored, every primitive vessel you've dismissed, they were all part of the plan. We called it Operation Phoenix, rising from the ashes you left us in. The tactical display lit up as Kraxan warships poured into the nebula, seeking to overwhelm the revealed human fleet with superior numbers. But they were entering a battlefield that had been prepared for them, where every gas cloud and radiation stream had been mapped and planned for. All ships, Sarah commanded, her voice carrying to the entire Phoenix Squadron. Execute attack pattern Omega. Show them what humanity has become. The battle that followed would be spoken of for generations in both human and Kraxan space. The human ships, smaller but infinitely more maneuverable, used the nebula's natural phenomena as weapons. They led Kraxan vessels into radiation pockets that disrupted their shields, fired through gas clouds that amplified their weapons' effects, and struck from impossible angles using the cover of stellar matter. The Nightingale drifted through the asteroid field, its weathered hull collecting dust from the ancient rocks that surrounded it. To any passing ship, it appeared to be nothing more than another research vessel, one of dozens that still roamed the frontiers of human space, cataloging phenomena and collecting data even after the Kraxan invasion had pushed humanity to the brink. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck, her dark eyes fixed on the distant stars. At 42, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had survived humanity's darkest hours. Her civilian clothes, carefully chosen to match her cover as the vessel's lead researcher, felt strange after years in a military uniform. Final system check complete, Commander. Lieutenant James Morris reported from his station, disguised as the ship's maintenance chief. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Special modifications are functioning within parameters. Sarah nodded, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. The Nightingale was humanity's greatest deception, a wolf in sheep's clothing. Beneath its unassuming exterior lay experimental weapons, advanced shields, and cutting-edge stealth systems that had taken years to develop in secret. The ship was unique not just in its capabilities, but in its very design philosophy. Instead of trying to match the Kraxans' overwhelming firepower, they had built something different, a predator that could hide in plain sight. Status report on our guests, Sarah asked, referring to the Kraxan delegation that would be arriving within the hour. The aliens had finally agreed to a scientific exchange, supposedly a gesture of peace after years of conflict. "They're right on schedule," Morris replied. "2 ships, a diplomatic vessel, and an escort. Minimal weapons, as agreed." Sarah turned from the window, facing her bridge crew. They were an elite team, handpicked for this mission. Each of them wore civilian clothes, played civilian roles, but carried themselves with the unmistakable bearing of veteran soldiers. "Remember," she said, her voice carrying across the bridge, "we're researchers. We're excited to share our findings about the asteroid field's unique mineral compositions. We're grateful for this opportunity for peaceful exchange." She paused, making eye contact with each crew member. "But the moment I give the signal, I need warriors." The crew nodded. They all understood what was at stake. The Kraxans had appeared 15 years ago, their massive ships darkening Earth's skies. They had offered humanity a simple choice: submit or be destroyed. Earth's military had fought back, but their weapons had seemed primitive compared to Kraxan technology. Within months, Earth's major cities lay in ruins. But humanity had survived, scattered across its colonies, hidden in places like this asteroid field. And they had learned, adapted, evolved. The Nightingale was proof of that evolution, a weapon born of desperation and ingenuity. "Contact," Lieutenant Emma Walsh announced from her sensor station. "Kraxan ships entering the outer field." Sarah straightened her civilian jacket. "Begin recording all sensor data. Let's make our scientific interest look genuine." The Kraxan ships approached slowly, their sleek hulls reflecting the distant starlight. They were beautiful in their way, organic curves mixed with crystalline structures, so different from the utilitarian designs of human vessels, or at least what the Kraxans thought human vessels looked like. "They're hailing us," Walsh reported. "On screen," Sarah ordered, slipping into her role as lead researcher. "And remember, we're scientists, not soldiers. Let's make history." The main screen flickered to life, revealing the alien face of Ambassador Kextal. The Kraxan's scaled features and 4 eyes were arranged in what Sarah had learned to recognize as a diplomatic expression. "Greetings, Dr. Chen," the ambassador's translator conveyed. "We are honored to participate in this exchange of knowledge." Sarah smiled, years of preparation making the expression seem natural. "The honor is ours, Ambassador. We're eager to share our findings about the unique properties of these asteroids." As pleasantries were exchanged and docking procedures began, Sarah felt the weight of the moment. Everything they had worked for came down to the next few hours. If they succeeded, humanity would gain its first real advantage in this war. If they failed, the Nightingale would become just another piece of debris floating in the asteroid field. But Sarah Chen had not survived 15 years of occupation, had not watched Earth burn, had not spent 5 years preparing for this moment, to fail now. The Kraxans were about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their ability to adapt, to deceive, to turn their very weakness into strength.